Okay, now now that we have seen the overview on the Malay humoral system, which is based on the medical ataupun medicinal practices. Now we are going to look specifically into the Malay humoral food system. So, like most of the humor system, a believer in other cultures, Malay also claim that they use their own bodies as the ultimate criterion for categorizing the food. So, as we know that Malay, in a very broad categories, we usually define the characteristic of food as being hot or cold. So in order to determine whether a food is cold or hot, the Malays usually try the food itself, and where they try the food itself, they themselves, the individual that taste the food itself, could feel the effect of eating the hot food or the cold food themselves. So there is several category of hot food and cold food that we usually hear in even until now. The classification has endured the generational experimentation. So in general, there are several categories of food that can be categorized as hot, and there are several kind of food that can be categorized as cold food. So we are going to look at some of the example of hot food and cold food. So here we can see that the first example is fat. So fat in this sense can be derived from both of animal and plant fat oil. So fat can be considered as hot because they satiate the appetite quickly and give the eater a feeling of well-being. So for example, durian, raja buah ni kan. So durian have a very high percentage of fat. So therefore, it is usually considered as extremely hot food. So usually, even when we are eating the durian, so we have experienced the hot properties or hot characteristic of the durian where ourselves. So that's why overeating durian can produce fever in susceptible individual. So not everybody are going to be affected by the heat from fatty food, but most of them, even ourselves, are going to feel warm when eating hot food. So that is one of the characteristics of hot food, that it produces sensation of warm sensation. The fat also are thought to be as hot because like durian, aside from the fat itself, the final metabolism breakdown converted into alcohol. So that's why when you are overeating durian, it will have some kind of alcoholic intoxication characteristic. So the second hot food in this classification is alcohol. Although Islamic religious law forbid the drinking alcohol, as you can see that we Malays have fermented food. Such as tapai. So fermented food such as tapai or fermented cassava root, we know that it is being produced or prepared with yeast. So because the production of tapai is produced with yeast, so it is considered as very hot. Then we have animal food or protein. So animal food including item like egg, milk, beef, except for fish. So all these items, egg, milk, beef, chicken, are considered as hot. So like fat, animal protein produce satiety and well-being. So however, the categorization of milk as hot is also backed up by humoral logic. So if milk were cold, it would give baby whose bodies are colder than those of elder a stomach ache. So since milk is good for baby, so the logic of the Malay people is that it must be at least warm. So that's why milk is categorized as warm or hot food as well. So macam saya cakap lah sebelum ni, orang Melayu ni dia macam dia tak ada scientific punya kaedah dalam macam apa menggunakan apa scientific method dan sebagainya, tapi sebenarnya walaupun dia orang tak ada kaedah scientific dan sebagainya dalam hidup dia orang, tapi dia orang still boleh dikatakan hidup dalam sains tau. Dalam erti kata dia orang still bereksperimentasi dengan apa yang ada dekat sekeliling dia orang berdasarkan apa berdasarkan kepada hasil yang dia orang dapat. So eksperimen dan hasil tu merupakan salah satu cabang daripada sains lah kan. So walaupun dia orang tu macam tak tahu apa itu sains, tapi sebenarnya dia orang hidup dalam sains. So disebabkan tu dia orang boleh categorize makanan ni dalam apa, ada yang sejuk, ada yang panas dan sebagainya. So the next category spicy food or spices kan. So spices or spicy food are generally hot. So Malays have one term for thermal or humoral heat, ataupun panas lah kan, ataupun another term that we usually use for hot food is pedas lah kan. So that's why spicy food or spices are considered as hot in terms of humoral food system. So since spices are both pedas and panas, since eating them produces heat in mouth and perspiration on the skin, so that is a physiological proof that the food itself is hot in the humoral doctrine. So bila kita makan benda yang spicy, yang berempah, so kita akan berpeluh kan. So dari situ orang Melayu boleh mengatakan bahawa spicy food ataupun benda-benda yang berempah ni dia ada unsur-unsur panas. So itu menjadikan bukti fisiologi yang merupakan makanan-makanan berempah tu panas dari segi humoral food system, Malay humoral food system lah. Dan kita ada salty food. So salty food can be exemplified by item like dried salted fish. Also it refers by extension to plants that grow near the seaside and become hot due to the influence of the salty sea. So one criterion for inclusion in this category is the effect of salty food on people who have abnormally hot blood. So when people that have abnormally hot blood, macam darah tinggi kan, so they will suffer symptom like headache, dizziness, as well as dim vision, macam kabur kan. So this kind of symptom is a symptom of excessive heat rising from the head. So another criterion is the association of salty blood or the hot bloody fluid. So ni macam kategori-kategori yang apa, orang Melayu nampak lah bila apa, kenapa makanan bergaram ni dikatakan sebagai makanan dalam kategori panas.